Afternoon. Welcome to the Mediterranean microclimate of Hove. And I'm Father Alexander, and we're going to make our 285th step in our walking tour through the Bible. And we're going to be starting the prophet Ezekiel. Now, the prophet Ezekiel is quite a well ordered prophet. The book is a book rather than a compendium, which is really very helpful for us. The prophet Ezekiel is going to be a lot easier, I feel, than the prophet Jeremiah proved to be. Now, he starts off saying when his vision happened and where it happened. It happened in Babylonia, and he was with the exiles who'd been carted off from Jerusalem after the first exile. The kingdom of Judah still exists under King Zedekiah back home, but he's with King Jehoiakim and he's been sent into exile. He goes into ecstasy and he sees this amazing vision, which is in chapter 1, of the chariot of the Lord. Now, when I was a boy, it was very common for people to be very excited by a man called Erich von Daniken, I think he was called, who wrote a book called Chariots of the Gods, which sold millions of copies. And this had a long description and analysis of this passage from Ezekiel, saying, of course, that Ezekiel was being visited by a spaceship, and this spaceship was crewed by people from outer space who came down and taught us lots of very important things and so on, and then went away. And then, of course, we all forgot about it. But Erich von Daniken was there to remind us. Now, as a matter of fact, that's complete rubbish, and everybody realizes it's complete rubbish. The vision of the chariot of Yahweh, of the Lord, is very complicated, and it's meant to be very complicated. One of the things is the person who then wrote the book of the Apocalypse in the New Testament took it upon himself to write the Apocalypse with the book of Ezekiel open in front of him, because many of the things that are in Ezekiel are also in Apocalypse. Now, what is Ezekiel saying? Well, he went into ecstasy and he saw a vision of God. And what he wants to tell us, first of all, is one, ecstasy is the way to truth. Two, the truth of God is transcendent. You cannot describe God, you cannot see God. What you see is the glory of God, which is like certain things. And this is the word that keeps on being used. Like. They were like animals. They were like a human face, a creature that looked like a man. Or sometimes he even says somebody who, he says here, I saw a brilliance like amber, like fire, but it wasn't amber and it wasn't fire. Radiating from what appeared to be the waist upwards, what appeared to be. And for what appeared to be the waist downwards, I saw what looked like fire, giving a brilliant light all round. The sight was like the glory of the Lord. It wasn't the glory of the Lord, it was like the glory of the Lord. So you've got the Lord, you've got the glory of the Lord, and now you've got something like the glory of the Lord. So the Lord is, if you like, still hidden behind his glory, and his glory is hidden behind something that looks like the glory of the Lord. And he also says that it wasn't a man, but something that looked like a man, and so on and so forth. So this like comes again and again. What he's saying is God is transcendent. And what he's saying is the way to access the transcendence of God, the outer reaches of the transcendence of God, is through ecstasy. Now, this is interesting. I think that Ezekiel is an extremely important prophet for us today. First of all, he's telling us the ecstatic path is the path that the church, needs to take, or rather, certain people in the church need to take. We need to listen to the ecstatics, and we need to have a transcendent vision of God. Trouble is, who are these ecstatics? I've never come across an ecstatic. Perhaps, maybe we could say, well, we need to listen to the contemplatives. There are certainly some contemplatives in the church. Or if we're not ecstatic, and none of us are ecstatic, then we need to be more ecstatic than we are already. Originally, Christianity was an ecstatic cult. There's no doubt about that. It seems to me, reading the New Testament, reading the Acts of the Apostles. Where is the ecstatic element, the mystical element in Christianity today and in Catholicism today? Do you remember that great writer from the English Middle Ages, who wrote The Cloud of Unknowing. He's unknown, he's anonymous, and he talks about how there's this cloud of unknowing, and it's through the cloud of unknowing, which can only be pierced by the darts of love, that we will come to know God. And of course, we do have another great work by an ecstatic, a mystic, a contemplative, Saint Bonaventure, Itinerarium in Mentis in Deum, the journey of the mind into God. I think what Ezekiel is telling us is stop talking about God. Yeah, I realize that's what I'm doing. Stop talking about God, experience God. Leave aside the book entitled The Theory of Swimming and jump into the pool. In other words, the only way we will get to know by God is by first-hand experience, by experiencing Him, and by raising our hearts and minds to God, by taking the path of contemplation, the path of ecstasy. Remember what ecstasy means: ecstasis, standing outside yourself. We need to journey into God. That's really important. Are you hearing this idea that we need to become ecstatics? No, probably not. I'm certainly not hearing it. And I think the deafening silence shows us that maybe we need to be hearing it. So this vision, incidentally, if you go on the internet and you just put in vision of Ezekiel, you'll get all sorts of pictures of what Ezekiel saw. What he saw is incomprehensible, but that's the entire point. God transcends our understanding. We can't see God. We can't understand God. We can just, if you like, see or perceive the membrane that surrounds God and know that there is something beyond that membrane, if you see what I mean. Now, he is, as that famous American says, a known unknown. We just know that we don't know him. We know he's there and we know we don't know him. It is something beyond our minds, but our minds long for this vision of God. Okay, the Son of God, or God, then says to Ezekiel, Son of man, get to your feet, and I will speak to you. He speaks to him and gives him the scroll which he eats, which is as sweet as honey in his mouth. And this scroll is entitled, on the spine of the scroll, if you like, is entitled The Lamentations, Dirges, and Cries of Grief. Tastes sweet, but this is the word of God. This is the word of God which he is to deliver. The word of God comes from God himself, and he ingests the word of God. Now, this happened in the 30th year, presumably of 30th year of Ezekiel's life. What had he been doing for the last 30 years? He'd been studying the scriptures. He had read, marked, and inwardly digested the scriptures. Now he is fit to deliver the message to the people. So this eating of the scroll also comes again in Revelations. Have you, have I, have we truly digested the word of God that is in the book of the Bible? Have we, by eating it, made it part of our own physicality? Because what we eat becomes our body, doesn't it? Have we become so familiar with the Holy Scriptures that it's not that we know them backwards, but rather that we live their values? So I think it's saying, first of all, be an ecstatic. Secondly, God is transcendent. Thirdly, know the Scriptures. Are you getting this? Are you being told by various people in the church, know the Scriptures, know the Scriptures, know the Scriptures? I remember when I was in my 20s being told, know the Scriptures, know the Scriptures, know the Scriptures. Now, not so much. Well, let's try and make that up. Let us encourage each other to know the Scriptures. Anyway, he eats the scroll, Lamentations, Dirges, and Cries of Grief. And he says, I'm sending you to the house of Israel, which is a set of rebels. And he also says, God says, they won't listen to you. But I'm sending you to them so that you may rebuke them. The whole house of Israel is defiant and obstinate. But now I'm making you as defiant as they are, and as obstinate as they are. I'm making your resolution as hard as diamond, harder than flint. So do not be afraid of them. Do not be overawed by them. They're a tribe of rebels. Now, the church is meant to be prophetic. Yes, the world is clearly in rebellion against God, and that's the case. Therefore, they are hard hearted and they are brass necked and all these other things. They are defiant. We, the church, must defy the world. Now, again, that's pretty strong, isn't it? Because we've heard so much in the last 50 or 60 years about dialogue with the world. Yes, okay, but having a dialogue with somebody who just doesn't want to listen is not good enough. It won't get you anywhere. Rather, we must defy the world with our values, with our lives, and with our words. That's very important. The church is called to be prophetic. And I do think there have been people in the last 60 years or so who have done exactly that. I think Mother Teresa has certainly would be one person that comes to mind. Somebody who defied the world and without even opening her mouth. That is why Christopher Hitchens took against her so dramatically. Then, after 7 days, the word of the Lord was addressed to me as follows. Here we are, 3:17. And he says, Son of man, I have appointed you as watchman for the house of Israel. Now, what's a watchman? Well, you know what a watchman is. He's the guy who walks around a town saying it's 2 o'clock in the morning or it's 3 o'clock in the morning, the night watch. But also in those days, the watchmen were essentially the police. They didn't have a police force. The watchmen were the police. They come up incidentally in the Song of Songs. There, when she's wandering through Jerusalem, she meets the night watchman who asks her what she's doing. So the watchmen are I vigili urbani. That you have in Rome, the traffic cops, but they are the people who look after the town at night when all honest people are in bed and just make sure nothing goes wrong. So I'm making you a watchman. So the idea is if the town is being attacked in the middle of the night, the watchman gives the alarm. He rings a bell and everybody gets up and defends themselves. Now, when he is the one who is going to warn the community of Israel about the dangers that are facing them. The church is a watchman. God has made the church his watchman of the world. The church is there to warn people about the great dangers that are lurking or to give the alarm when danger approaches. And he says, if you don't do this, you will be punished. When someone upright renounces uprightness to do evil, and I set a trap for him, it's he who will die. Since you failed to warn him, he will die for his guilt, and the upright he's practiced will be no longer remembered. But I shall hold you responsible for his death. Being a watchman is a hard task, because if something goes wrong, it's the watchman's fault. So the church cannot shrug off the fact so many people are living bad lives. We failed to warn them. It's our fault. It's quite hard, isn't it? We've got to be watchmen and we've got to be defiant, even though people don't want to hear what we have to say. We've got to be watchmen. We've got to stick to the script. Okay, I hope that helps. All the very best. He's a great prophet, isn't he? Bye.